Good evening, everybody. It is 8 p.m. on a Wednesday night. If you're watching us live, you're watching on YouTube or Facebook Live or on Twitter. If you're listening on a podcast, you're checking us out on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and like 40 other platforms. I don't know. I can't pay attention to how many places you can listen or watch New Jersey Revolution Radio live, but we appreciate it wherever you are. If you haven't shared us out yet, go ahead and share us out. And if you're so inclined to make a donation, help us support our staff, our productions, our streamers, you can go to www.njrevolutionradio.com. I can't stress enough how much the support from our grassroots activist base means over the last few months. It's been getting harder and harder and more challenging to cover things, but more and more activists are stepping up all over the state, all over the world, and we try to bring it to here weekly from New Jersey. Tonight, I am joined by my guest host out of, what town are you in? You're in Camden County, right, Kim?
Yes, in Belmar.
And Belmar, New Jersey. How are you, my comrade, tonight?
I am doing good. How are you?
Okay. It's been pretty stressful out there, I think, for most activists. I pay attention a lot to Facebook and Facebook streams. I've been trying to take in a little more social media from Twitter and Instagram and things that people are using because I don't want to just be the old guy just on Facebook, right?
Exactly.
So I see varying stuff, and I'm really trying to stay before the show a little bit. You know, we got some serious discussion coming up. Dr. Letitia Sampson is going to come on and talk about the messaging that's out there with Black Lives Matter and how do we discern good messaging from bad? What is good messaging? What is the messaging coming from grassroots activists? And what is messaging coming from people, quite frankly, that don't have the best of intentions when it comes to creating policy around the current uprisings? But I wanted to stay a little bit positive. So let's talk about weed before we do anything. I see you got the blanket in the background.
Yes.
There has been. So you're tell us, so people don't know, Kim is a medical professional. Tell them your background and your kind of position on weed.
So I've been working in the healthcare field for about 20 years now, and I will say when medical marijuana started becoming really popular in California, I did a lot of research on it, and it was amazing how much was not known out there to people. How children with seizure disorders from having the CBD could help them stop seizures. For anxiety issues, it's great. For headaches, it works great. Nobody realizes that it's the CBD that's in marijuana is really beneficial. And not just to think, for people in pain, THC is much better to use than opiates. And that was another reason I really got into it, because I've seen too many family friends get addicted to opiates and lose their lives by that. And marijuana doesn't kill anybody.
At this point, I think we've all, known, lost, and dealt with addiction in our families and in our personal lives. It's impossible not to have with the scale and scope of the opioid epidemic going on. I will say, like, from the CBD, and I actually, just before the show, I took a couple of CBD gummies. The problem with it is, though, Kim, to be honest with you, is that we don't know enough about it to make it valid medical science. It's valid. Like, I'm a patient too, right? I take it for anxiety.
Yeah.
It doesn't, honestly, I have back pain and it does kind of come and go. It does give some relief sometimes and it doesn't in others. And I think it depends on the strain I get, right? And what the dosage is. And it's still, because it's a plant, it's kind of hard to dose sometimes. So that comes down to science, right? Can we research this? Can we look into CBD? Can we verify the medicinal effects on seizure disorders? But we can't because of the federal drug schedule.
Oh, no, but in other countries they have. So I think if you really want to research it, you got to look at other countries. Israel is one country that has done a lot of research on medical marijuana. And I'm sure there's other countries out there too. So I think that's the problem because we have such a taboo in the United States for it that, it's hard to research here.
Yeah, I want to thank those out there that are fighting for weed laws, but what we have happening in New Jersey here, is not advancing any of these causes really. I mean, it's all
No.
about corporate cannabis making money. They're selling shitty grass clippings at some of these dispensaries. I could get better weed from the black market dealers, that are out there that I've been buying from for 20 years. And what we've got right now is the people that have been selling me weed illegally and getting locked up for it for 20 years. They're going to keep getting locked up for it. And the people who came to my state out of nowhere because they're buddies with Phil Murphy or they got some investment
Mm-hmm.
from some shit are going to get my money for weed. No, thanks. I'm not going to
No.
vote for this law. I'm going to keep it illegal. I'm going to keep buying from drug dealers.
No, and these are the people that should be selling, that should be in business, the ones that have been doing it for all these years illegally.
But white rich people came from New York and they decided they'd write a law and take our market from us.
And they hiked the price up so much that a lot of people can't afford it.
$66. What are you paying for? Let me ask you. So I live near the Garden State one up here in Woodbridge, and last I checked, there I get it. If I get a veterans discount, believe it or not. One of the advantages of serving an imperial nation is you get cheaper weed. But even my veterans discount, I think it's 60. I think it's almost $68 an eighth.
Yeah, it's about the same here. Sometimes you can get it anywhere from 55 to like 65 for the eighth, depending on it. Depending on what type if you get the higher THC or the lower THC.
Yeah. There is some variations, but I look at Oregon and other places where and Maine has a really loose dispensary law. So it's not as complicated here. They don't track your usage. You can basically have 2.5 ounces. You can buy 2.5 ounces at a time. You can home grow up to 6 plants. So it's very loosey goosey. Pretty much everybody has a card. And it's like normal there's like normal retail shops around. And we are seeing these examples of it passing and really fostering, like a local economic system, fostering research and development into, the real medicinal uses of this stuff. But we're not following it. We're just making money. And that's why I'm opposed to it. I don't know. Let me do some experimentation with my own. By the way, this is a tincture I made the other day. See what I did? Have you ever made one of these? You ever do a tincture?
No, I haven't gotten that far.
Do you know what a tincture is? I
do know what it is because that's exactly what they will give kids, and they will mostly do.
I wouldn't give this to children.
No, this is for sure, Brian. I'm talking about ones where it's majority CBD, right. And that's where it's at Matter of fact in Colorado. It was called I think it was the Stanley Brothers had Charlotte's Web was one of the first strains that they gave kids for seizure disorders.
Yes, that's one of the famous ones there. And just so anybody knows, the tincture is basically THC dissolved into alcohol. And this particular one, I make this in grain alcohol, so I use Everclear. And I make it in grain alcohol, and I use a lot of weed. So you need very small doses of alcohol so you don't get drunk or anything. It's just a delivery system for.
Yeah, well, with kids, you don't do that.
No. What's good? I can keep this, and you can put it basically in anything. You put it in a cup of coffee. You can put it in a cup of tea. And right now, I just had dessert, so I'm having dessert. So I made a chocolate brownie cupcake. You ever made a cake in a cup in a microwave?
And yes, I had.
Yeah, and then I dumped 5 milliliters of my medicine in there, and then that's the way we do it.
There you go.
Again, we're gonna get to overall messaging on Black Lives Matter and stuff, but you mentioned down in Camden, and one of the demands I'm seeing, of course, I think the most attention getting demand out there is the police abolition, defund the police. Or all the way down, and as you go from level to level, it's like abolish, defund, train, they're fine, don't worry about it, make more cops. I mean, so, but one of the examples being put out there is near you, Camden, where you've done some activist work, you've done community fundraising, stuff like that, but they didn't really defund the police. Can you give us an idea of what happened in Camden?
Yeah,
Um,
so in Camden, back in before they actually disbanded the police department, well, the Camden City Police Department, 2013. 2 years before that, they actually cut the police force in half. Which, of course, when that happened, more crime rise, and that gave them a reason to defund the police department back in 2013. So now it's no longer considered Camden City Police Department; it's considered Camden County Police Department. And one of the things they did was they would bring in yeah, so they would bring people in, they would get paid less, they would get less training. One of the good things that they tried to do is try to make the police department seem more friendly, where they would come out and they would do barbecues, ice cream with the folks and everything. But really, to be truthful, in order to really make Camden a better city, it's not the police department that you have to be focusing on. It's the
right.
resources in Camden. In Camden, in the 70s, 80s, there was a lot of manufacturer jobs. There's no jobs in Camden.
Same with
Education.
Trenton, same with North. I
Yeah,
mean, right?
exactly. And the education is there's not enough resources, not good money going towards education, not enough money going to proper housing. Far as also talking another thing in Camden is it's a food desert. There's no way to get good food out there.
Mm.
We're talking about old buildings which probably have lead in them. Who knows if the water itself, how that is. And all this is what needs to be focused in an area like Camden. So when we talk about taking money from the police department, then what we should do is we take that and we should be reinvesting it into Camden, which never happened.
Yeah,
And
some of the focus on this, has been because of police brutality and because of that
yeah,
like highlighted issue and everything that's going on. But there's been this call, which I'm trying to pay heed to myself, of paying attention to good things that happen and stop focusing on, police murder and all these negative images. Well, one of those positive images could be a city like Minneapolis, which just recently defunded and fired. And I think they're trying to highlight now this Camden thing, but it's not in realistic terms. It doesn't match up because those other programs aren't going on. The solution is not more or different policing. This,
it's
like you said, the solution is in a better education system and making sure there's a friggin' grocery store in Camden.
and jobs.
How many years have we been saying that Camden is a food desert?
Oh God, for
How many years?
years, for years. And
And the same way North. And so what do? They bring a fucking Whole Foods in. Well, thanks, great job. And I get a $10 apple. Good job.
they don't even have that there. They talked about putting a shop right in there, and that never happened either. So it's yeah. It's really sad. We need to focus, and that's how you build. That's how a community gets better. Like I said, in the 70s, 80s, when Camden was a thriving city a little bit, and it had manufacturer jobs, people went to work there.
Mm-hmm.
And when people don't have jobs, and you got to feed your family, what's going to happen?
Exactly. I mean, exactly the way we've treated and the way that New Jersey is designed, the segregated state that it is, really does allow us to concentrate both areas of wealth, but areas of poverty.
Yeah,
And that's what we could go back through history all the way from redlining and all that type of stuff that created the situation. But solutions for these problems have to be positive, and they can't be based in policing. They just can't be based in more authoritarianism. They can't be. You don't arrest your way out of these problems, no matter how much you want to retrain the police. And I think the best development is starting to send social workers and other people out on 911 calls. Because I've been saying, I don't want to toot my own horn too much here, but I've been saying this for years. If somebody's having a drug overdose, you don't need a gun. What the hell do you do with a gun? Somebody's having a drug overdose. Oh, let me see if I need to shoot them. Show up without a gun. You don't need it. But we send armed, militarized police to respond to every police call. And we're now seeing what I say is as a really big positive step forward is an actual recognition that that's just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to send armed militant men and women, whatever. But, mostly, from my experience, been males.
white males.
White males, but depending on what town you're in, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's not,
exactly.
because it really does. You see, they do diversity programs, but a cop is a cop. It's the blue is you're not born blue. You choose to be that way.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that really that I when I was working in the ER, we would have to learn how to de-escalate a situation. And cops don't do that. They don't learn to de-escalate. They always escalate the situation. They don't want to take the time to sit there and talk to a person and say, hey, like just the guy just recently from Wendy's in Atlanta. Nobody sat here and say, hey, what's going on? You're having a bad day. Is there something I can help you with? No, automatically you just want to harass the guy.
It's been ridiculous. I want to pull up here a video that I've seen, and I can't. Also, I have to go to our chat over there. But when we talk about solutions, if you were tuned in last week, we do special reports here on New Jersey Revolution Radio Live when we see activists come up and do things. I'll reach out to them, or they'll reach out to me and say, hey, let's let people know what's the story behind the protest and so one of those groups that I've interacted with quite a bit over the last few years, really, I met through the Green Party a while ago, is the Newark Water Coalition. So we had Saber B on last week, and we talked about this mutual aid march going on in Newark, and it was a great interview. Sounded like a great event. They were going to give away food, baby supplies, diapers, stuff like that. So I didn't get into the march. I didn't pay attention to the streams. It was later on that day that I looked and started seeing posts that the march was attacked. And I didn't really know what to make of it. I really didn't understand. And I know there's some politics going on around this. I know there are members of the coalition that are running for office. However, I don't believe that was the theme of this march, nor would I ever promote it. People know that I don't promote people running for office for corporate parties. If you want to run for office as a radical or an independent, that's great. But but we stay away from that. My respect for the Newark Coalition goes much deeper than any kind of race for office.
Yeah.
And so to hear my friends getting attacked for giving out food in Newark was disturbing on a lot of levels. And to hear the names flying around as people now that work for the Baraka administration. And, look, Baraka attacked us when we did our Newark VMA protest with the whatever. I didn't care. I really didn't care. He was right, whatever. Not from Newark. My point wasn't from Newark. We were making a wider point, whatever. The Newark Water Coalition is responsible for getting $120 million in funding to help you replace the lead lines in Newark. And they're still fucking that up.
Yeah.
And they're still not testing the water, and they're still just telling people that it's fixed, even though they're not testing to make sure that it absolutely is fixed. Anthony and Saber and Victor and all, they're the ones that are demanding that we hold them accountable, that they be transparent. And their response is to attack a march where they're giving away food.
It's crazy.
I don't know what to make of it, Kim. I really don't know what to say. I'm still.
And you know what? I think it's people coming outside. I think it makes them look like fools when we come out from outside of our area into Newark to help fight for this cause. And I think that's probably a lot of their issue, maybe with some of the politicians that there's. But we all need to come together in order to fix this, because what happens in Newark can happen in your town.
But they just had the pop march. Larry Ham lives in Montclair.
Yeah.
You think if I had shown up, how many, there were 2, 3, that's a huge march. How many of them were from Newark? How many of those, we all know, we've all gone to Newark for a march, for a pop march, if you're an activist.
Yeah.
And the problem seems to be that, they didn't do it the right way with the right people. They were giving away food. And what gives, and the problem is, this isn't an activist struggle. This is the government. These are city officials. I'm disturbed. I'm just disturbed. And I don't know what to make of it. What the fuck is Ross Baraka thinking?
And it makes you wonder about the whole, that's why people don't want to vote. They feel like, why bother? And it's a sad situation. It really is. But if you don't vote, you don't get these people out of office.
I want to play a clip from Anthony. I want to play a clip from Anthony because they went through it. It's about a 45-minute, and if Leah could link that, I don't know if she has already. I'm not seeing Leah. Did you link it already, Leah? Give me a thumbs up. Nope, she's paying attention. Our assistant producer Leah is in there.
Hurt, and they look like, damn, I have to do this shit again.
So this is a little bit from Anthony
prioritizing our people.
What he
I
thinks.
love the city of Newark. Everything that I am is because of this city. And what I hate is that when I drive around and I see people at the bus stops and they just look hurt and they look like, damn, I have to do this shit again. I have to go through this again. I have to fight. I don't have, my boss treats me like shit. I live in a shitty place, or maybe a place not, I got 8 jobs. My water isn't clean. I have to worry about getting shot. Education isn't what it used to be. And why?
So that's a little bit about, like, Anthony's from Newark. I mean, Anthony was born and raised in Newark. And you can hear right there. I mean, he
has passion.
Being from Newark to know what's going on. I mean, I'm 5 minutes down the road, 10 minutes down the road, and that's what's going on here too. I mean, these are wider struggles, and to say this is just like for the city of Newark to attack this is
movement. It requires community building, and this is why I don't think a lot of
this is Victor
would throw a press release up on their letterhead, saying that the mayor and that the city is violating constitutional rights, but we cannot stay quiet. And Anthony, as a black man and a Salvadoran, and me as a Salvadoran, our people have seen way too much impunity. For centuries, governments that have governed our ancestors get away with killing our people, with intimidating them, with telling them to be quiet. And this is not happening today. I know that my grandmother didn't come here and suffer so that I can end up in this position. I know that I didn't earn my law degree so that I could be intimidated and be put in this position. I also want to tell folks, as it says in the statement for Monterosa Law in 2016, Midi Baraka sat me down and attempted to tell me that I was not going to have a march on City Hall because the mayor didn't agree with it, and because of the way that it makes the mayor look on housing.
So there are a lot of statements like that, and the link is up there for people to take, but there was a lot of back and forth on what's been going on as far as the mayor dealing with activists and stuff like that. And this is, like, again, this isn't this is something that needs to be fixed in that community. But the talks I've had with my comrades, just friends of mine, I'm like, y'all got to heal this up. You really do. They're the people that see each other in the stores, see each other on the streets, going in and out of the bodegas, taking their kids to school together. I mean, what happened? I don't know. It shook me up, and I think it pretty much shook everybody up that was out there that day.
Yeah.
The worst part is, I haven't heard shit from the city council. I haven't heard shit from Newark administration. Nothing. Have you heard anything?
Do you think you will? Probably not. Yeah. Probably not.
Facebook posts, supporting the line that it's out of towners causing a problem. But I think it's pretty clear in some of these videos, and I'm not going to repost too much because they're out there. I mean, it's clear that it wasn't outsiders coming in to cause a problem. It was an organizing effort. It was a march. Maybe there's political differences there that I recognize. I'm not going to get into because it's local politics and I'm not part of that scene.
Yeah.
But that all being said, a march of people giving away food got attacked by city administration officials. And that's unforgivable. That's just unforgivable.
It really is.
I don't understand, but we're going to take a break here. I said we got to get serious, right? I said that's why we started out with weed, because I wanted to have a little bit of fun before we started getting into the rest of the show, because it's a serious matter. We are going to talk about some commercials here, though. So let's plug the people that help us out a little bit really quickly before we get into more serious matters. But before we get into, I do want to let everybody know that you too can sponsor New Jersey Revolution Radio. We appreciate everybody that chips in. So you can go to www.njrevolutionradio.com/donate. Check us out. You can donate via PayPal. You can donate via Venmo. You can donate on Patreon. Patreon is starting to build up. Leah, our assistant producer, her marketing goal right now is to bring Patreon views and donations up. So we're going to start producing a little bit more content and stuff in there in the coming weeks and months, hopefully. But it kind of has to start with a few extra donations from you. And we appreciate that where we can get it. I am kind of holding on a little bit because my computer, as most of you listen to the program know, when I really need to do something, my computer freezes up and goes slow, just like yours does. But I almost have it there. And there it is. There we go. There's our commercial music. Now I can do commercials. Here we go. All right. So tonight's show brought to you by the August Agency, www.theaugustagency.biz for the independents. Charlie Cano over there at the August Agency. You know him if you've been in organizing meetings for immigrants' rights and other stuff. And if you have a small business, if you have an activist organization, if you're an independent artist, go to Charlie's website. Again, that's www.theaugustagency.biz or call him 201-895-7227. I'm going to say that one more time when it comes up on my screen. So grab your pencil now. It's area code 201-895-7227, theaugustagency.biz. Please support the people that support and the businesses that support New Jersey Revolution Radio. We have a small budget here, so small donations really, really do help. And we have a small staff who works for almost nothing. Leah and our accounting agencies and our streamers really do it basically out of the goodness of their hearts. So when you donate, you make their lives easier. You make their lives safer, too, because we can get better equipment. We're going to add our guest here to the stream, Dr. Letitia Sampson. I don't know if she can turn her camera on. She's muted right now. There she is. Hey, Letitia, how are you?
Hey.
I'm great. Hi, Brian. How are you? Hi, Kim.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. So Letitia and I met in my hometown of Clark, New Jersey. And if you paid attention to our streams about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think something like that. We were the early crew. We were there.
Yes,
early.
we were.
Were you part of organizing that to begin with, or you just one of the people that showed up out of miscommunication?
You know something? I was not a part of the organizing of the event. I actually found out about the event about 10 minutes before I showed up there. And then when I got there, found out about the snafu with the time change, etc. But just decided that we needed to still do something while we were there and not just like go and leave and come back. So I'm really glad that we were able to have that presence there for that extended time.
Clearly not your first protest. Clearly not the first time. And I don't know if you caught that I referred to you as general a couple of times because
yes, I caught that.
Essentially what happened was like we started talking early and a couple of people got up and then Letitia started leading some chants and started really getting the crowd going, just took over and people followed because it really wasn't organized up to that point. It was just so natural leadership came out. We had some security issues. I don't know what you saw of the car that almost drove into the crowd.
Oh, the one that almost hit me while I was with the bullhorn? Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. I didn't know how close you were. Let's get into that in a minute. But before that, I really want to get to know you a little bit because that was our first meeting. And I know I was really impressed by just the fact that you could control a crowd like that. No bullhorn. No bullhorn at all. All right. To start with. But controlled the crowd. So tell me about your counseling services. I know you run a counseling business. How'd you wind up?
Absolutely. So I have a agency called Great Joy Counseling. It is actually in Westfield. So I am in Clark almost every day, getting lunch, shopping, etc., on my way to or from work. So I have long roots in the Clark community and have supported that community for a while. So when I found out that there was a protest there, it was really important for me to be there to ensure that we were able to let the members of the community know what goes on if you are a Black person in Clark, because it is certainly a unique experience. So for me, it was just really important to be able to bring my background as a licensed psychotherapist, as a professor, but most importantly, as an activist to that event. I wanted voices to be heard, and I wasn't sure how open people would be just because of the location. So I really wanted to take charge there. So I'm glad you appreciated that.
Appreciated is a mild way of putting it because I grew up there and I know the community and now I've been told it is improved, but it is not improved that much. I can guarantee you that. And that is coming from people that are being defensive about their town. I understand.
Of course.
To say I appreciate it, I'm looking at the people that showed up there as soldiers. I can't look at it any other way because of that town's history. And Clark isn't exclusive. It just happens to be town that I know the best because I grew up there. But these white island towns are a victim of the red line. We talked a little bit. I know you've got some roots in activism as well. You got some family members that we talked about in activism. Can you speak a little bit about that history and what that history is, or how it's affected you kind of parts?
So absolutely. So uncle of mine, Baba Zaid Muhammad, is definitely an individual that I watched all my life really lead protests, be an activist here in the States as well as abroad. And he really sparked that in me, right? The ability to really raise your voice, to not be afraid to be out on the front line, to really put your, money where your mouth is. And because of that, I really think it was something that boiled over into my professional career. So, as a licensed clinical social worker, community activism is something that I have always had a strong affinity for, something I've always been connected to. My activism has actually led to changes in laws. In New York State, we were successful up in 2003 in order to ensure that young women who were victims of commercial sexual exploitation were able to have their records sealed. Up until that point, young women who were victims were not able to have their records sealed once they were adults. So they would carry a prostitution charge into their adulthood, right? So we were able to testify, we were able to get signatures, and we were able to actually change New York state law. So when you participate in events like that in your early 20s and you see the impact, it's very easy to stay connected to that type of work because you know that it does work if you are methodical and intentional.
When I think of your uncle Baba Zaid, I think of the Amistad curriculum. Absolutely. I know that he's been very active in that curriculum, and I will give a chance to plug it. If you haven't looked up the New Jersey Amistad Commission, I strongly suggest that you do. And Leah, if you can find that link, Google New Jersey Amistad Commission and put up that website link. Great work, and so important because being raised in Clark now in this community, I came up through the schools, and I was contemplating some of the stuff that I was taught in the Clark High schools. For instance, that like communists couldn't buy blue jeans. And I remember, and I don't want to call any specific teacher because I don't remember being taught like real racism, but certainly a distortion of history. Certainly, not acknowledging the genocide that happened to the Native American people, not acknowledging the suffering of the Black people. I do remember vague memories of hearing, like in Louisiana, it wasn't too bad to be a slave because they could have their own apartment or something, And so I remember those very white, privileged perspectives coming from that community. Now we're going to Clark. Now I know there's been some follow-up protests.
Yes.
And well, let's start about the protest itself, though. From your perspective, walk me through it. You got there. We kind of made a couple of introductions. You took charge, and then the day played out. And people can go back on the live stream. I think I had a good enough charge on my phone most of the time to document the day. It was a great project of mine, and I just wish I had more donations so I could do it more often. I'm just saying. But
you can definitely count on one from Great Joy Counseling. I will definitely write you guys a check. So absolutely.
Appreciate that.
I will do that.
But take me through the day. Take me through the protest. What did you think of the protest? And then afterwards, I want to talk a little bit about what happens afterwards as well.
You know something, I actually followed up with the protest the following week. In Clark, they've been 3 to my knowledge so far in Clark. That day I was really, really pleased with the members who decided to show up and they really, really raised their voice. I was a little concerned when we first got to the parking lot because it was sparse, right? There were sprinkles of people kind of here and there. And what I noticed most importantly was that everyone was kind of like in their own groups, right? So I wanted to bring people together because I thought that it was important that everyone felt comfortable and everyone felt, the spirit of why we were there, why it was significant to be in that town raising our voices, right? So in order to do that, I wanted to gather everyone, ensure that people felt comfortable to share. And I feel like after we did that, they kind of just took it and ran with it. And I think that's why it was so successful. When you look at the pictures and you see hundreds of people that showed up, people were stopping in the streets and posting on social media. It was amazing. So, just to have that spirit echo was great.
It certainly was. Awesome. Viewership on my streams was off the charts for me. And from a personal experience, it was just moving to see that in my hometown.
Yeah, it was
sorely needed. It just sorely needed, but that's not the end of it, right? I mean, just marching in the street
No.
with the face. And we heard the Mayor Sal. It's Mayor Sal.
Yes.
So clearly there's work to be done. Who's doing it? What is behind the scenes? What's behind the scenes of all this stuff?
Well, you know something, it's interesting that you say that, Brian, because when I looked at the flyer for our talk tonight, you talked about the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And you said, who's really behind it? And that's something that I have thought about quite a bit. And so in preparation for our talk tonight, I went on a few websites and looked up a few images. And while I will certainly not disparage the idea of Black Lives Matter, I do have some issues with some of what I am seeing with the organization. And I hope that we can talk about what some of those issues are.
Let's start. Let's start. You know what I actually thought when I thought about the format for the show? I don't overly get into how we're going to go the show. I do wing.
Okay.
I like to get to know my guests on the air with my audience. That's kind of my style. But I wanted to kind of just set in place at least some kind of guidelines for people that want to be a part of this movement, regardless of color. What is it? And the one guideline I came up, for instance, is if you want to start a Black Lives Matter chapter, be Black. It doesn't I'm not going to co-opt your movement and as a white guy give you all the rules here. But for instance, right? Let's start. Can we start there? And then
I think that's definitely a good start. But what I will add to that is, because there is something that, I see as a Black woman that I have issues with the particular movement, and that is the presence and the imagery of Black men in the forefront. It is almost non-existent, right? So not seeing, the imagery of Black men being utilized, the ones who have been, lynched by the police, is really the only echoing of Black men in leadership positions in the movement. And that is concerning to me. That is problematic. I think about the New Yorker who published a picture yesterday of to depict protesting, and it was a Black woman with a young Black boy, right? But so it's important that we are mindful of the imagery and we are mindful of who leads these events, because we have to be sensitive to those who are impacted the most, right? So as a Black woman, I will certainly not say that I have not experienced systemic institutionalized racism throughout my career, despite 4 degrees and being a doctor and being a professor, etc. But I still get to walk through life with more privilege than my Black male brothers. And so that is something that has to be discussed. That is something that has to be dealt with when you talk about movements, right? So that is something that I hope we could get into tonight.
You just said a lot of what needs to be said, but we can keep getting into it. Say that it's so valid, because I actually had a conversation with my business partner, Heather Warburton, and she said that Black women are dying. It's not that it's even just affecting them on an economic level. There have been several reports of Black women activists who have been dying either from suicide, stress-related disorders, all kinds of going on. Not to mention, God knows who may be getting into the activist community and doing things. We've already seen cases of murder happen out of the Ferguson.
Absolutely.
Prison. And we'll never know who killed them. We'll never know who killed them, because it's probably people that know how to get away with it, unfortunately. And that's
exactly.
So this is a real thing that's killing Black women. Now, I talked to you a little bit about being a therapist and being a therapist, and I pretty much I want to say that every Black woman I've ever worked with has said they need a good therapist, and especially related to cognitive behavioral therapy. What does it mean to you as related to your business, as related to your work, trying to heal people mentally? What does it mean to be a Black woman therapist?
What does it mean? Well, we are actually grossly underrepresented, in this field, right? I think it's something like 4% of psychologists and licensed clinical social workers are Black, right? So that is, unreal, right? Because, Black people make up 13% of the US population. So even if it reflected the number of individuals that made up the population, that would be better. But we're in such high demand because there are not many of us that are doing this work. And I would certainly not say that you have to have the same ethnic background or racial background as your therapist, but it makes a difference specifically for communities where there are huge disparities in access to mental health treatment, or there is stigma that keeps certain members of communities from wanting to receive therapy, right? So for me, it's really ensuring that people recognize who I am, how I show up in the world, that is something that I lead with, especially for clients who would not otherwise access mental health services. It's so huge.
I appreciate that viewpoint, and I hope it brings your point home of bringing Black women to the forefront.
Yes.
So what from, I don't want to just say specifically with Clark, because I've had a lot of conversations, and I may have talked to you a little bit this, but I did put this out on my personal Facebook page, that your work, the work of activists, the work that people are gone out into the streets and made these larger displays and publicity and stuff like that, has made personal conversations in my life different. And whereas I used to talk to my relatives and former coworkers about racism and things and feel very uncomfortable and have to put up with defensiveness and ignorance, I mean, to say the least, it's not there. And I don't want to say, white people are cured. They're not. But the conversations have become significantly easier. I'm not getting the pushback. I'm not getting the, I have a Black friend quite as much. I'm not getting, and one of the narratives, I know we've all heard this, is that I don't see color. Is that when I see somebody, I don't care. I see you as a doctor, you're a great person, and I don't care if you're purple. And and in the past, I've had a real hard time getting through that's insulting, right? I've had a real hard time because they're insistent. And I've had that same conversation now, and they've stopped and they've shut up. Heard me out. And just so you know, the counter argument to that is that is a Black person you're looking at. They want to be seen as Black. They want to be respected as Black. It's not hard. Don't erase people. You're erasing somebody. And especially when you have somebody that's proud of, how would I feel if somebody told me that, my work was invalid because of, their perception of it. You should see the whole person, and being Black is its own unique experience. Being a Black woman is its own unique experience.
Absolutely.
Being a white guy who runs a media company is a unique experience, but it's not an oppressed one. And when I say that, I'm seeing the looks in their faces. I'm not getting the arguments and the cutoffs during the conversation. So I want to thank you for that and everybody that's been out in the streets.
Oh, you're welcome.
I hope that helps. But again, not there yet.
That's not enough though.
No,
so
how do we keep it going? That's the positive aspect.
So let's talk about that. So, I have actually led at this point, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8 different protests, right? So between New Jersey and New York, right? And in doing so, everyone has asked me what's next, right? Like after we have taken to the streets and really shouted some of the chants and we've walked, what do we do? And so what I've actually created is an anti-racism curriculum training. So it's actually going to be starting via Zoom. I'm starting on June 30th, and I am going to do 4 Tuesdays in a row. So I will make sure that you get the flyer and you get the information so you can share it with your listeners, because it's not enough to just say, okay, I see color. It's not enough to even go to protest. There has to be some specific, deliberate training on what it means to be anti-racist. Yeah. There has to be some specific, deliberate training on what it means to completely eradicate white supremacy in America, right? So without that information, then people have the emotional connection, but they are not empowered to really bring about change, not just in their personal lives, but in the lives of those around them. Because one of the things that I've echoed at many of the protests, Brian, that I've led is this: if you are going to come to protest and, show up and march and all of that, but you don't know how to confront a family member who makes racist comments over dinner, that's a problem. If you are going to go back to your office where you know that Black person or that brown person is being paid significantly less, and you don't advocate for that person, that's a problem. So we can't just focus on the emotionalism or the public displays, but we really have to focus in on the education. So that's why I am doing this anti-racism forum, because people need to know exactly what it means to be anti-racist, how to communicate, how to confront their own racism and bigotry, etc., and then how to work for social justice to eradicate racism. So it's really intentional. So I'll make sure you guys get it, because that's what people need. They need the education.
We do have a few minutes left, and I'm glad. Believe me, I have another like 20 questions for you, but we're not going to be able to. You know, the title is show tonight is Whose Message Is It, right? And you talked a little bit about personal, and I talked about like, listen, you know, be Black at least. You know, I mean, and that's what there are. I mean, literally, that's not a joke. I mean, there's I'm hearing out of South Jersey, there's white people trying to start Black Lives Matter. You know, come on.
I think do an affinity group. That would be a little better, right? I mean, just do an affinity group.
Reach out. Look, you've got Dr. Sampson here. You've got New Jersey Revolution Radio. I'm a white organizer, and I come from a white leftist background. I know this, and I know who my audience is, and I'm really glad that I have a diverse audience. I look at it, and it's not all white. It's not all, you know, it is somewhat diverse, but in general, I come from that white left, white union, white culture background. And I'm just trying to talk to my people here a minute. Just shut up. Just shut up. Just stop trying to run events. Stop trying to run for city council. Stop telling, you know, there have been some really, really embarrassing things said at these events. And I take it as pure ignorance. Ignorance like you don't know. Like not ignorance like you hate, ignorance like you don't know. But you got to stop arguing so much. Stop getting defensive. Understand that, you know, you have privilege, and really open up your ears and heart. Can you? Has there been a particularly irritating narrative? Is there a particularly irritating thing? For me, it irritates me when politicians say that voting is a solution. I think voting is a part of the solution. If you want to vote, great. I'm not going to tell people who to vote. I'm one of those people who didn't vote. I get it. I don't vote shame people. There's a pile of garbage in front of you, and if you don't want to go out your house to vote, I don't care. But other than that, I kind of don't get too irritated. Are there lines out there though that I'm like, oh geez, like stop, come on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't have that much time. There's so many narratives. There's so many narratives that are annoying. I mean, from things like, oh, you know, don't destroy your own community. Well, quite honestly, like that's probably the most irritating one, just because it is based in ignorance. I mean, when you think about the fact that we, you know, make mention to these things, but Black people are consistently lynched in the streets by the police all the time. I mean, it's not their own communities, right? And so that's probably the most irritating one. Just things about the riots and that. And I try to explain to people that there's a difference between protesting and there's a difference between rioting and looting. And so people not understanding those concepts and using those words interchangeably is problematic. I think the second thing is, the second most irritating narrative is probably all lives matter. You know, it's like, if I hear that again, I will probably like go crazy, right? Like that one is really, really, really irritating, because it just completely aims to erase who is disproportionately murdered by the police, who is disproportionately, not seen, not heard, etc. And I would say the last thing is that there is not a focus on economic empowerment. Right. So, you know, people don't want to talk about the economic disparity between whites and Blacks in America. Right. And that is one again. So it's all about education, because if you don't know these concepts, you don't understand these things, it's easy to make ignorant comments. So for me, those three are the three pieces of rhetoric that really have to go, because they're not helpful. They're damaging.
do's and don'ts. We need a list of do's and don'ts, I think, for a lot of the new activists. I know you've got some courses coming up. Kim, do you have anything for our guests before we sign off? And we're going to do our plugs and make sure people know.
I'm so grateful that you're out there doing this. You know, as someone who is a white woman, I don't understand what it's like to be a Black woman. And, I love the idea that unfortunately, what has happened, is a terrible thing with the hands of Black men being murdered by police. But it's bringing, I don't want to say it's a good thing, but I think we're able to communicate a little bit more, and we're able to say to people, listen, what you're doing is racism. Before, as white people, we usually don't want to say that to other white people, because we don't want to be the outcast, but anymore, I'm more outspoken to people when they do things like that and say, you know what, that's just racist, what you just said there. I literally had relatives who are like, well, why are they taking down Christopher Columbus statue? What does he have to do with anything? And why are we taking down the Confederate, statues of Confederate soldiers? What does that have to do with anything? And I'm literally saying, this all has to do with racism, and we don't need statues of racist people up there.
All right. Dr. Sampson, I'm really sorry. We're going to add our assistant producer, Leah. You hear the music in the background. It's a lot like the Oscars when you hear the music. Wrap it up. But take a minute here. Let us know websites, where we can find you, how we can sign up for courses. Please stay tuned. The podcast write-up will be coming at you within 24 hours or so. And we'll make sure we include the stuff in that link. So
absolutely. Please connect with me at greatjoycounseling.org. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Great Joy Counseling. The events are on Facebook. They're also on Eventbrite. We are really, really excited about our anti-racism forum. We want to educate on what it means to be anti-racist and how to further this movement. Thank you guys so much for having me.
This is great. You'll be learning some anti-racist stuff from a natural born leader. Is it all right if I call you the general? You're a doctor. I can't give you a new title. I'm going to call you doctor. If you weren't a doctor, I'd be calling you. Leah, good show this week. Do you have fun?
Oh, definitely.
All right.
Great to hear from you guys.
All right, Leah,
thank you so
behind
much.
the scenes doing all our post-production work. It's going to come at you soon. So this will be coming out on podcasts. Share it out. Please, again, if you want to make a donation, it really does help us out. Our streamer fund has been doing okay. And I'm trying to get out to at least one protest per week. But if I get a little more, get out to 2, 3, 4 more. So we appreciate it. We will be back here next Wednesday, as we are every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Until then, my name is Brian Powers, and I want to remind everybody out there in New Jersey that the police can quit their jobs. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.